people either just don't care or they have a different view because of who may be presenting the gun violence thing, but they're not getting involved. They're not getting involved. They're not.
What do you mean because of who's involved?
Like moms married to white folk. Because I remember when we had an event, and one young black girl, and rightly so, and something you said, she felt like, we don't need y'all to come over here and tell us what to do. You know what I mean? And true, but we were working together as a collaboration, and I was a part of that collaboration, trying to work together to do that. And so a lot of times what ended up happening is that in our communities, maybe folks are just too wrapped up in too many other things, but I think it's very important. Just like we try to tell people to get out the vote and all these and get involved in your community, civically involved in your community and engage your community. And part of that involvement, whether civically or community-wide or wise or whatever, you got to address the gun violence, right? You got to address community gun violence. And this is something that people run away from. So when you talk about gun control, people begin to think, oh, you're trying to take my guns away from me. And then black people are like, we've always had faced whatever laws are made. It's a double whammy for us, right? Because that's where they're going to enforce it on black folks, and other folks, they won't even enforce those laws. But I think what people tend to miss many times, that's why I'm trying to focus more on let us have a conversation and let us start doing something among ourselves. Because if you don't want that, then what do you want? Because if you see people running around here, especially youngsters that haven't been trained, got illegal guns and so on, and just like a young man just got killed yesterday, right? Over there, I think I forget his name. Well, I know his name, but I don't want to announce his name. But I know that he was over in the Lincoln Park area and got killed, right? And to my understanding, that's gun violence. It was through gun violence. And so when you look at our community, and I just wanted to not just our community, but the black community, I'm talking about not just San Diego, even though I've talked about San Diego too, violence is responsible for 5% of the deaths when you look at white people, 5% of deaths. And then when you come between the ages of 15 to 24 in California, but then it's 26% of deaths among Hispanics, men and boys of the same age, and just under 50% among black men and boys in the same age group. 50%, it jumps from 5 to 26 with Hispanic, and then 50% with blacks. So we got a problem there, right? When you talk about homicides on a national scale, 50% of the homicides in America are black people, and black people only make up 13% of the population in America. And you're talking about 50%. And then when you look at gun violence, I think it's somewhere around 76%, no, 86% of those people that are killed, the 50% that are killed, 86% of them are killed with guns. And so that we have a problem and a crisis in America. And even in San Diego, with San Diego population being 6% of the population, but 26% of the homicides are black victims. And when you look at that, and this is one thing people ain't gonna like, but when motive could be identified, 67% of black homicides were gang related, 67%. And so, of course, you have arguments and all these other different type of things that folks deal with. And so, what I'm talking about and the discussion I'm trying to bring to the table when we talk about gun violence and preventing it from happening, we have to do something in our communities. And when I talk with law enforcement about where the guns are coming from, and not only law enforcement, but Dr. Sid Martinez did a research. He rode with the gang units and so on. And then he got data from the DA's office to do his research on data on guns and violence and how it's used in the community and where they're getting the guns from. So what he came up with was 60 to 70% of the guns that they got from the gangs in San Diego, 60, 70% came from residential burglary. 30 to 40% of the guns came from other states where they have lax laws on guns, right? And so what my focus was on is these folks getting these guns out of these homes, right? Residential burglary. So that's where you come with safe storage laws and things like that, and say, hey, if you don't have your gun on with you and in your control, you need to lock it up. so nobody can steal it and take it and have it, you know, like I prefer to have a bolted in your car, bolted in a safe when you're not there, so that no one can steal that gun, because that's how they're getting guns.
So bolt the safe down and store everything inside the safe.
Exactly. When you don't have your gun on you and so forth. So
like when a gun storage or gun safe law that they actually just passed one, and it just one got
in
passed
San Diego.
In San Diego. So what they're telling me is, and I think it's important too, because as the folks that are really pro-gun, NRA, people that follow that, conversations have been had with adults, and people need to like be big when we have these conversations. So what people are saying is being said is, you're trying to do everything to take my guns away or whatever. We want people who aren't responsible to have guns. And what this gun storage law is really saying is, no, while you're home, do whatever you want to do with your gun. It's just while you're gone and your gun is not in your person, where you don't have the ability to control whether it leaves your home, lock it in a safe. It's not saying it has to be locked up while you sleep. And,
exactly.
You know, because a lot of folks sleep with their straps.
Right.
You know
right. I mean? Exactly.
And so
sleep with your gun. Is that what you want to do?
And I think that's important. And then we have to look at also the amount of children that are killed by guns.
No, that's exactly.
That's a whole
and accidental
issue.
Deaths, suicide, all those are the other things you got to look at. So you don't want people to get access to those guns. And that was one of the things the other thing that Dr. Sid Martinez came up with is that even when you talk about these folks getting these guns, not that, and I should take it back, it wasn't just residential burglary, but some of those guns wasn't taken through burglary, but they were taken from residents where they knew the person, they was a friend of the person or whatever. They might have stole it, or they might have just used it, took it and used it, or what have you. And so it wasn't just all the time burglary breaking in, but they came from residents where they knew somebody, or maybe they didn't, they broke in their house. And so when we talk about gun violence prevention, especially among Black folks and in the Black community, a lot of times people want to give a lot of pushback on it. Oh, well, you trying to take our gun, that's racist. You know, that's all a part of racism thing. Well, you know what? I understand about systemic racism and things like that, but we have some serious issues we got to deal with in our community with the over rate of the racial rate. You know, the racial, when you look at the racial rate of people being killed, Black, white, and Hispanic, Blacks are being overwhelmingly killed. And 70% of those guns, 80% of those guns are with, 80% of those homicides are with guns, right? And so with Black people, we got a problem with guns, you know, and so any responsible adult, you know, if you want, I don't have any guns, but if a person want to have a gun, they're responsible, want to get it legal and get the training, how to use a gun, how to store that gun, and so on and so forth, then by all means, you know, do that. But we need to understand that you're not the real issue per se as an honest, law-abiding citizen, but where the problem is when a crook get a hold of that gun, or when a kid get a hold of a gun, or when somebody is not mentally stable, get that gun and put it on themselves or someone else. That, you know, that's where the problem begins. So it's about preventing that from happening, you know. And then on a national level, a lot of these guns are coming from there. They are jacking these gun stores when they bring the guns to the stores. They are robbing the trucks, robbing the warehouses before they get there, all type of stuff. So there's all kind of other ways guns are getting out there. But I think at the end of the day, when we look at it, it's access to guns. And the other thing that Dr. Martinez brought up that I think is very important.
And who is Dr. Martinez?
Dr. Sid Martinez is he has tenure. He's a professor, associate professor, something like that at University of San Diego. And he's been doing research on guns for a good while. And so forth. He's making a video of the Stephen Clark issue up there and dealing with it from the perspective of gun violence and police brutality. So he's done a lot of research on it. And so me and him, you know, are real close and we talk a lot. And when I want to get data or academic perspective, I give him a call and talk with him about it. He can refer me to wherever he prefer to, send me information or share with me his research and so on. Mm-hmm. And when we had our town, I don't want to call them town halls, but when we had our summits in the community, we had one at Great on 28th Street, and we had one at Malcolm X Library. And when we had those summits on gun violence prevention, he came and presented at both, right? And so, but we didn't get a lot of participation from the community and for the community to get involved. But then when someone dies or someone gets killed and there's a lot of violence, people say, we got to do something about this. We got to stop this, right? We got to stop killing each other, and so on and so forth. And true enough. So that's where I was going to get to, where Dr. Martinez also was saying, not only do you got to look at access, where people are getting these guns from, but why do people feel they need guns, right? What are they using them for, right? What is the mark? Why is there a market for guns? And we know a lot of it has to do with economics. You know, people get guns because they want to rob and do different things because they're poor and poverty and got to make some money. I made my money that way, so I understand. I lived that life, right? I wasn't a drug dealer. I wasn't a pimp. You know, I didn't have that kind of game to be a pimp or sell drugs. I'm just be honest with you, man. You know, but I robbed. You know, I'll rob individual. I'll rob your house. I'll rob a liquor store, gas stations, those type of things, drug houses, whatever.
Did you rob with guns?
Yeah, I robbed with guns. I surely did. You know, that's the way I made my money. And so I understand that. I know, you know, on the economic side that, you know, people do that. But I think that there's been times where I know in the streets, even now and even back then, to where that when these guns are taken off and people have less access to them, you have less violence and even less crime on it, you know, because there's some people, and it's just sad to say, some people are going to commit a crime no matter what. You can offer, let me tell you, there are youngsters that I've offered jobs to, right? Say, hey, you know, I got a job for you, man. You know, where you going? Nah, I'm good. Because he's selling his dope, he's making his money doing his thing, and he's good, right? So so when we talk about economics and so on, and dealing with the youth, me and my son having a conversation about that, he made a good point to me. He said, you got a lot of these guys, that's intervention. And that's the hardest part, right? Is intervening in somebody's life that's already got a taste of this good money and ain't gonna give it up, you know, for no $15 an hour, whatever. But you get them younger. Get the younger ones before they start tasting that and start working on them and so on. The thing for me, though, is that I go to that small percentage that's already got a taste, already in the violence and so on. And so that's where I work and that's where I'm at. And it's about really trying to work with these guys because, yes, some of it is economics. A lot of them don't understand the trauma that they're dealing with and what they're going through. They have no sense of how to deal with anger management, and so on. When you get angry, how to resolve your problems, how to deal with your issues versus resulting in violence. I was the same way. Even after I got in church, I was the same way. I get real upset. You feel like you disrespected me. Then, you know, I know how to handle this. But I had God, you know, and a lot of times these guys don't have nobody to talk to them, to coach them, to guide them, and to help them, you know. And so that's what mentoring and working with some of these youngsters about, because when you connect with them and build relationship with them, and they started getting to understand values and morals, they'll even though they're gonna do something they don't want to do, and they'll call you sometime like, I'm not in a good place right now, I need some prayer or whatever. And I've had that to happen. And so I know that you can reach these folks and change, you know, and help folks to reach change. But it's a lot of work that we have to do in our community.
I agree. And, you know, one of the things I think about is, you know, when we look at the greater system, and I think what we're seeing, a lot of the violence and things that we're seeing, a lot of the hopelessness that displays itself in the violence and just the sheer amount of it, the lack of, I guess, self-awareness and value that we see in one another in the Black community. You know, I think a lot of it has to do with the after effects of the system that slavery created. Slavery created a system that's goal ultimately was to devalue, to dehumanize, to animalize Black people. Primarily Africans that came, you know, that became slaves, right? Yeah. So, and I think, and again, it's important to look at the timing that we have, right? So apartheid, people are saying apartheid's only been over for 55 years, right? In America, right? We had no voting, no rights, no nothing, right? You know, 1619, the first Africans arrived in slavery and began to develop and take root. 1865, allegedly, slavery was over. Then we had hundreds of, you know, at least 100 or so years of
100 years of Jim Crow.
100, right? So 1865, and black people didn't get the right to vote till 1965, which is just insane, right?
Yeah.
White women got the right to vote in 1920.
Yeah.
But black women that helped the white women get their right to vote didn't get it until 45.
And the woman that led that charge, with a lot of time people try to praise it, was a race. She said, "I'm not doing this for black folks to have a vote."
Yeah.
She didn't care nothing about that.
And that was obvious because it would have changed something.
Yeah.
So we see, like, I think it's important to look at that, man. I think it's important. You know, everybody wants to dismiss it and be like, you know, come on, man, it's over. Like, we need to just move on. But I think what we fail to look at is the effects of what a system like that does to the people who are afflicted by that particular system. And so I think, you know, when you just look at rape in and of itself, right? Just the rape of black women and what that must have done to the psyche of not just the woman. Just imagine what happens. The husband watches his wife get raped by this white man. And just think of the emotions that go through the head.
Or cut her stomach open, throw the baby out.
I mean, come on. So you think about, and that's just insane, but you think about how does the man feel looking, the husband feel watching this, knowing that if he intervenes, they're all going to get killed. So he has to decide, do we all just want to die? Or do I just take this or whatever? Like, how do you take that like a man? And then you think about the woman and then he begins to feel, man, he's a piece of crap. And, you know, I should be able to do something for my family, but he's in a losing situation. She is looking like, why me? What about my value? Probably thinking, why don't you do something to help me, to the husband, knowing that he can't.
Right.
So there's just all this turmoil. And that's just one situation or whatever that is being taken. And then the next day you get up and do it all over again and you get beat. And you get it's just dehuman. The hearts that did those type of things, the hearts of the people that did those kind of things. And not only
it had to be some strong people too, man.
The ones that perpetrated that type of violence. The hearts of the people of the white folks. Come on, man. And then the tenacity and the voraciousness of the Africans that were being treated that way, man, is so commendable. One of the things, just real quick, as a quick little timeout, some of you guys might have seen the post I made, as we talk about sexual violence, sexual trauma, that I think is very important to be able to speak out about a lot of the things that we see going on. And one of the things we see is gun violence. We need to address that, right? We need to address it and have real conversations about it. I think it is important that black people that haven't sold their souls to the system are the ones that are involved in the conversations. And it is a little weird to have white folks come into the community that don't know the community issues per se and have a say-so on what happens. I can see why that's bothersome, but I just wanted to give a shout out real quick to the sister, Lalata G. Lil. She's out of Madison, Wisconsin. She wrote a book called I Can't Live Like This Anymore. And some of you may have seen the post that I did. You can find her work at Lalata G, Lilada.
How'd you find out about it?
G.com. Her brother has a podcast called Black Like Me, Dr. Alexander G. Jr.
Dr. who?
Dr. G. Dr. Alexander G.
Okay.
So Alexander, common spelling, G-E-E, Jr. You can find his podcast at Black Like Me. I've been listening to his podcast for a long time now. Just really got a lot of benefit out of it. They do a lot of good work that primarily deals with black people. And then one of the posts he put about his sister's book, and I was like, let me just order
check it out
to see. Man, I ordered it. I got it.
Look like it's a pretty small book too. Look, you can get through it.
200 pages.
Yeah, that's
200 pages.
That real quick.
I read it in a day.
Yeah,
I sat down and but I'm gonna tell you something, man. The point of this is that her style of writing is very raw. She's gonna tell it like it is. This is raw. I mean, and I was so proud to, and it was so easy to read. There's a lot of deep stuff in here, but it reminded me of the generations. She began to talk about her inability or inability, not even willingness, but even maybe sometimes willingness to do something about it, and how that would have passed down from generation to generation. And so I just want to encourage the sister.
And what is the book about? You said sexual violence?
I can't live like this anymore. And it chronicles her life of sexual violence. I don't want to, sexual trauma. I don't want to give it away at all.
I got you.
But it's such a great,
kind of like a movie.
It's such a great book. and I'm telling you, it's raw. And so I just want to encourage us in the community, man, to those of us who have services, and I mean services that really help from a deep psychological standpoint. These are issues that require specialties a lot. So
amen.
Shout out to the ladies who have dealt with these issues before.
We all have
Prayers
in our
go out
families,
to the women that have been sexually assaulted. It's very common, especially in the Black community.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to do too, just as a kind of a you may not be able to see this, but Charity Apostolic, there we go. Divine Protection Night, December 19th. Bishop Bowser is going to have a service at Marina Village Conference Center, 1930 Quivira Way, from 6 to 9. And it's going to be Bishop Bowser right here. And then one of his good friends, Elder Buddy Hauser. Hauser was a brother that was a victim of gun violence.
A couple of times.
Yeah.
Got shot when he was Black Panther and got shot by the police.
So we want to come by and see that. There'll be some folks honored that night. So December
and he'll
19th,
be one of them.
I don't want to say that, but they found something they want to honor me about. So I'm going to be there.
That's it.
So from 6 to 9, December 19th, 2019.
Come out. Everything is free. Food is free. Room. Our church paying for everything.
So come on out.
So come on out. This is what we talk about, supporting each other.
Absolutely. We'll post a flyer and we'll follow up.
If I was charging $50 a seat and $500,000 table, probably everybody been registered by now. It's free. People thinking they worth it.
Yeah, come on out.
But no, that's the way I operate. I never charge for anything when it comes to our church. Everything is always free. We don't charge for anything.
Well, it's not free. It's just the people that pay for it.
Exactly.
Let's transfer.
Oh, let me just say one more thing in regards to what you were saying in regards to gun violence, talking about slavery and things like that. Because I was my wife was listening to a show. Or I don't know, maybe it's just on that channel, but I heard the guy talking, two guys talking, they're talking about Black crime. And one guy was talking about, well, you got to address the family and blah, 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 and so on. Then the other person talking about poverty. And I came in and I was telling my wife, I was like, it's really somewhere in between. We have to have as Black people, we have to have an honest conversation with each other when it comes to dealing with violence and crime in our communities. From one perspective, you eloquently brought it out in regards to the systemic aspect of racism and how it impacts our communities and what we see. You cannot have a conversation without having that conversation. Gotcha. And a lot of times people don't want to have that conversation. Gotcha. But then on the other side of it, and this is what I was sharing with my wife, because she was coming from the argument too, she was just asking questions. But on the other side of that coin though, is that you may not be able to change the system overnight, but you can change individuals, right? Gotcha. Me, God saved me and changed my life. When I got saved, I left a life of crime and violence, got my life together, went to school to learn how to weld and things like that. Got into trade. I didn't like it, went to something else, but I was working, taking care of my family and everything. You're learning how to be a man, growing into be a man, growing to being a husband, growing into be a father, growing to be a responsible person, community member, growing to be a leader. You know what I mean? All the things a man should be. But it took some time for me to learn to grow, to do those things. But my journey started, right? And I got off of that wicked and evil and criminal path through God, through the Lord. The Lord saved me, the Lord changed me. And that family nucleus, that family unit, right, is powerful. And we have to start having conversations about that in the Black community. 86% of our children live in a home without their father. 70% of young folks that are in prison right now come from a single parent home. Those are things we got to look at too. But I think we got to find a medium to where that we can have this conversation, clearly understanding our past, but understanding right now here as you as an individual, you have freedom of choice. You have a will you could choose to do. You don't have to do this. There's a better way and there's a better path. Yes, we got a crooked and wicked system. We're going to deal with it in this lane. But in this lane, it's about responsibility, holding each other accountable and responsible in our communities.
I agree. And I think, and again, like you said, what's important is to realize when we sit down, I think this is what I heard you say, that we need to have an overall discussion. So you're saying it's not an either or.
That's right. That's right.
We do need to deal with the systemic effects of, because the systemic effects all have to do with why I may not even be willing to look at myself. But just like as in this book, part of what Ms. G's point was when she looked at her responsibility to address her sexual assault personally, and what was she going to do about it? That it was never going to happen if she didn't intervene by her, with herself and do something. And this is a good way to, I guess, lead into our second and final point, which is, defining the church's role in justice, right? And this is also a discussion that I think needs to happen on a grand scale, because as we always say, the church does have a responsibility, right? The church is supposed to be a light in the world. Violence is about darkness. It's about death. It's about decay. And so the church should be in a space to be able to deal with that.
And a study came out, and they talked to young people that's younger than 35 years old and younger. And when they talk to them, and because of the work I do, when they talk to them, they said their number one issue is violence. That's the number one issue. So if that's the number one issue of the violence, the church should be addressing and dealing with that.
And I think it's unfortunate, because I think we've taken on sort of like a capitalistic view of the world. And I'm all for people getting their money and whatever, whatever.
Right.
But I think when we start employing those strategies and those ideologies in the church, we begin to develop human resource departments and stuff. These are people like one
real
day,
life folks,
man.
All that is important, but you got to remember you're dealing with a soul.
And I understand the necessity to be able to track, but if you look at like some of the deals that churches are making with these other entities, require that they keep statistics, so that you can report certain things to people. And so what happens when you're getting a resource from somebody that you have to prove the need for, and you're providing these statistics, and what happens when the statistics maybe don't match and you got to kind of fudge and you start so I just feel like I feel like the church has to really be careful with the way that it creates relationships with outside entities, because then those entities begin to dictate the types of resources that the churches can use, and what kinds of things that they'll allow relationships to be able to be formed with the church. So I think it's delicate, but I do think that we've been absent for a long time. I think the church has been negligent for a long time. I think that what I've seen in the 27 years that I've been going to church or 28 years I've been going to church. What I've seen and I've been faithful to church. I mean, I you know what I mean? So I've been going, and is a lack of entering into the conversation. I think that what we've adopted is this role that says the church is only going to talk about abortion issues, and it's only going to be, it's only pre-birth stuff. That's the main stuff.
And I think that's the white church, white evangelical church. That's a big issue, because I forget the guy's name, started in the 70s. He actually started that movement in the 70s, and these people are so gullible, they fell for it. And his son now is like saying that's the wrong approach that these evangelicals should be making as far as fighting and voting for people based on this sole issue of pro-life. No, it was another guy, because he was in another country. He's from here, but he's in another country. I got to go back and because there was a documentary that I watched that showed about faith working in politics and how politicians play them, right? And that's why they love Trump so much, because he didn't just give rhetoric, he actually given them what they want. And people say whatever they want to say about Trump, but he's giving those white evangelicals what they wanted, right? And that's why they love him in there. They want to keep him in there. And if they can vote him in there 10 times, they would do it, because he's coming through where George Bush, Reagan, and many others have failed to come through for them on when it comes to the issue that you're talking about.
And it boils down to the only thing Trump been giving evangelicals is y'all can say Christmas. And they like,
but no. The appointment to the Supreme Court.
No, I know.
And for them, that is the big thing, because they want to overturn Roe v. Wade. But when you talk about, that's in the black church, in the white church. But as far as me coming up black church and so forth, I wanted to get involved in the community, because I knew that there was a work to be done there, because that's where I come from, the streets and so on. But the way this church structure is set up, it wasn't designed for that. And what I saw in the church was, I come up in wholeness. So it was about living right, being holy, worshiping God, coming to church, worshiping God. We're separate from the world. What they do out there, that's the world. If you do anything, try to win them and bring them into the church. But that's it, because we're a separate community, and this is our community right here, right? And yes, from a certain perspective, you try to meet people's needs, but really church wasn't even about meeting the community's needs. It was just more so about winning souls, filling those seeds, teaching people how to live holy. And that was it. You know, we're separate from the world. We're waiting for the Lord to come and things like that. And that's kind of what I grew up in. But at the same time, our church was an evangelistic church. So at the same time, thinking about how we can win souls, how we can reach out to the greater community, and so on. And so many times it was about just going out witnessing, talking to people, confronting people with the gospel, things like that. So the church do go out in that sense, or they might have an event at their church and invite you to their church and things like that. But from the perspective of what you're talking about, being involved to change systems, never, ever, never, ever. The white churches are, as far as going to change the laws and so on, but maybe back in the Martin Luther King era. And remember, I was telling you, we was talking about this, if you remember, is that even when you talk about Martin Luther King and being a man of faith out there in the community and stuff like that, the issue that I had is that and I found the same struggle. You're either way out there trying to help the community, but you left God back here. And I see that a lot of times. I saw that with Martin Luther King. I saw it where it's no longer about bringing the moral voice of God and making sure that putting God up front is about all these other things. And so that's a big struggle for the church, in the sense of where do we draw the line where we don't compromise, because some people don't compromise, with the LGBT community and how that's a part of the justice movement and so on. And some churches look at that and say, well, no, man, that's not my struggle. That's not what I'm dealing with. I'm against that, so forget them, and that's the way some people feel and think, right? And so you got all those different issues. So then when you have all these organizations today, when I was talking with a couple of people in social justice, and racial justice, and they were saying that, talking about how that, and there was another person said how that when you look at fighting for justice, most of the people that are fighting for justice are like atheists or don't believe or into something else. They're not really Christian based or, faith based, especially Christian based, like it used to be in the 60s and so on. And so you have all these different things. And so when you talk about the church coming along, I don't want to have nothing to do with them. I don't want to have nothing to do with them. I don't want to have nothing to do with them.
And what we were talking about earlier is, and here's my problem with that, right? So I see two things. I agree that when you look at the folks who are really out there in the public square, putting a name to the things that we see, right, and calling things out, are people who don't have really, in large part, are the ones who don't have any real affiliation to any type of faith-based organization at all. But then you see that, then like you said, I agree with this as well, that when you see certain churches do get involved, they get involved and they leave kind of God in some weird, obscure place. And so I guess for me is one of the things that we talked about, and I took this down in my notes last week as we were talking about a topic for last week. And I said, we, the church, and this is kind of how I thought about the church's responsibility in this and what we need to really be careful for. So I just want to read something that I wrote to see if it makes sense to you. We, as in the church, need to call oppressive people out. So we need to call them out for creating these oppressive systems and call them into the church, right? The purpose is not to just change the system, but to allow God to change the hearts that created the system. Right. And only God can do that.
That's right.
One of the things that I see happening.
That's it.
But because here's what'll happen. Here's what'll happen. And this is just, and again, we're both Christians. And so those of you who are listening, whatever you like, this is the perspective that we come from.
Right. So no disrespect to anyone else.
Not at all. Whatever you believe is what you believe. But I'm just saying, when you look at it from the way we look at it, because we are Christians, to me, like, I believe only God can change a person's heart, right? And I believe that men's hearts are desperately wicked. And so the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And so when you look at these systems that are set up, they're set up to put someone at an advantage. And so if you have somebody who today on Sunday, this group rallied enough support to be able to flip a particular issue and get the issue back the way that they wanted. Now, this group over here is going to do whatever they can to try to win people to get that issue back or to create something else to null and void that issue. So you have a whole bunch of people whose desire is for money and for fame and for power and for all these things. and they're all fighting for these issues. And then when the church comes in, the church says, well, how do we fit in here? Well, the truth is that the church fits in that those systems are affecting the people that belong to these bodies, but the church can't get into that fight that the world is making and fight the way the world fights. And so one of the things that we have to do, you said this earlier, I believe, is that we have to look more on an individualistic basis. We need to be up in these systems to find out what's going on, to find out the way that these systems are affecting people. And then as we begin to build relationships with the individuals, and if you happen to get someone who's a leader in this organization or whatever that you can create relationships with, then you begin to see that
somebody like Dr. Shirley Weber, an individual politician, but an individual who, when she got in, it wasn't no joke, right? I mean, off the chain with the stuff that she's changed and done.
She just said it this morning. I heard her talk.
This morning.
She just said this morning. One of the things she said.
And she's a believer.
100%.
She talk about God everywhere she goes.
But see, and I think, here's why I think that's so valuable, because I believe that there are people who are really being hurt by these systems, right? I mean, we can make statistics and we can wear shirts and hashtag all we want, but the reality is that the pain that these folks that are being oppressed by these systems, that pain is very real. And people are walking around on a regular basis, really trying to figure out, I don't know if my kids are going to be able to eat. And there's mothers out there or fathers or both or families that are having to not eat so that their children can eat. And they're doing the things that are necessary to be able to make ends meet. But it just has become so expensive. And it's important.
Or break a family up, right? I've seen this happen where a drive-by, somebody come through shooting at some folks, and little kids happen to get not shot, but caught in the crosshairs. And then they go tell the mom, like, you got to move out of here. And we giving you 3 months to find another place, move out of here, or we taking your children. You know what I mean? And that's systemic racism. That's wrong.
But those are the way that systems,
and won't give them no support to do that.
And those are the way that systems affect people. Yeah. So the churches, we have to be careful that we don't necessarily have to be the sole resource provider. But I think we need to be aware of the way that we got people in our church services every Sunday that are being affected in a real way. And if we don't teach a God, if we don't have a theology that is truly biblical and shows the way that God is on the side of the oppressed, and if we don't see that, and if we don't preach that, it gives the wrong impression, and people begin to feel a particular way and feel bad, don't want to admit that they really are lacking in their faith. They really don't know where God is at. They're about this far from leaving, but they feel guilty. They don't really believe the Christian message anymore because it's so irrelevant. And so I just feel like it's important for us that as we show up.
It's only irrelevant because what is happening, like you said, folks are leaving God, even in the message, right? When you preach a gospel message, it's supposed to be about Jesus and transforming lives, and that he came to save your life and everything, but they preaching everything else.
But I think, but I don't
watered down stuff, and that's why it's irrelevant.
But I don't even think that people are preaching a real godly message.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And so people, and I think it's important. I don't think people are necessarily leaving God. They're leaving that false image of God that is
trying to find where God is.
At the end of the day, it's a God that doesn't care that you're hurting, and it's a God that. So I was talking to a pastor the other day, and with a group of folks that we meet with, and these folks cuss. And they be but these are folks that aren't necessarily Christians.
I got you.
Right. So when the church is involved in things in the world, and people come to the church how they come. Yeah. People show up however they show up, and you can't. And so the idea is to not try to moralize people, right? That's the thing. I think what happens is how we create tombs. Now, Jesus says, y'all a bunch of whitewashed tombs. It's people that you have a form of godliness, not you, but people that you may not cuss, but there's a whole lot of things that's going on in your heart that people can't see. And so,
but I here's my take on that is that I agree with you.
You came up with that holiness movement, so I know.
I agree with you.
If I said the D word right now, you probably start twitching.
I agree with you. But I think there's several problems that I see. right? You know, number one, you got pastors that cuss.
Mhm.
You got pastors that, and it's almost like a trending thing, a new thing. Oh, if you cuss, you're a cool pastor. And so that's part of the problem. We just talking about profanity and using that type of language and so on. But I think the other part of the problem is that when you look in the church and the world, people have lost their fear for God and their reverence for God, no matter what. Like with me, when I was coming up, I cut my teeth with killers. Let me just be honest. I cut my teeth with killers that didn't care. You know, I've seen some stuff, man. And when we walk by a church, stop the cussing, put your bottle of beers on the side, be respectful. You see somebody come out there, you respect them, right? Those values are gone. Folks have lost those values, lost that fear, right? And I think it's what has happened is what we were talking about before, is that when you take God out of the message, you take out that fear and that reverence and that understanding of who God is, so you can respect it, right? And so a lot of times what ends up happening, churches become about a praise dance, a praise song, how beautiful the choir sing, how beautiful the building is, and the symbol of power is that, versus in the gospel. It pleased God through the foolishness of preaching to save those who believe. Paul said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation. And when you take him out of it, you take the power out of it. Just mention his name every now and then.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I guess what I'm saying is that what I believe what we've missed is that when I became a Christian, I remember, man, I literally said to God, and I had no idea what I was doing, man. I just knew, like, I knew that whoever you are, I want to know who you are. I said, I smoke cigarettes. I'm having sex.
Man, I hear what you're saying.
I'm having sex out of marriage.
And all of us came messed
cussing.
Up. Yeah.
I'm doing everything. And here, and I just said, if you don't, I thought that I wanted to change, right?
Yeah.
I thought that I
don't need nobody to judge me while I'm working through my issues, while I'm going through change.
And so I came in and I said, this is just who I am. And it came through an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I used to meet with some brothers on Sundays, and we used to just read the proverb for the day. And one day I reached to the brother next to me, Pastor Ed or Tim Huddleston, rest in peace. He was like a dad to me, good brother. And I said, man, we should start a church, man, for people like me, because I don't have church clothes.
Yeah, I don't know where to
All
go.
I wore was jeans and sandals, flip flops and t-shirts. I mean, that was that's how I dressed. But I knew that the churches that I was familiar with,
back in that day,
30-some years ago, you had to dress up. You know what I mean? Everybody
now it's changed,
nice,
but
right? So we began a church, and we started talking normal, and I learned like a little bit more about God, and I understood that it was okay for me to be angry. I want to say something about the book of Job that I think is important, but let me end my statement by saying this. I remember when I was trying to quit smoking cigarettes, and I would, anybody ever struggle with cigarette or any type of addiction know what I'm talking about.
Not cigarettes, but addictions.
And you just like, I'm gonna quit now. You know, I would smoke the cigarette, and all right, I'm done. And I would throw my cigarettes away, and I would wet them and put them in the trash. And then 2 hours later, I'd be craving, and I'd go to the trash, pull them out, put the cigarette on the toaster. You know what I'm saying? And I just couldn't. And I felt like such a loser. Like I was just such a loser for kept doing this over and over again. And it wasn't, and to shorten the story up, it wasn't until I really had to get honest with myself about what I was and what I was doing and who I was. And I remember just saying, you know what, I really want to quit. And something in me, which I now know was God's spirit, just was like, no, just be honest. And I was like, no, I want to quit.
And we got to be honest with ourselves.
So I had to say, you know what, God? You know what? I actually don't want to quit.
Right.
The reality is I actually like smoking cigarettes. And
the
truth is, the way I'm living, I don't even care if you're mad about it. I know that's wrong, but that's just the truth.
Right.
I don't care. And if you don't take it from me, I'm never going to stop. I need to be delivered from this. And guess what happened?
What?
God delivered. God delivered me. It was when I told the truth. My mother, who smoked for 40 years, my mother smoked for 40 years, and I told her that same thing. And guess what she did? She got honest with God, and she stopped smoking cigarettes and stopped. So my point is that it's the issue is the heart. And I think we can call people out of these oppressive systems. We can teach them a sense of morality that will work along with this stuff, right? But their hearts won't change, and so they'll find some way to skew it and then they'll bring other people in, and before you know it, it's just another flawed system because the heart's not changed.
If the heart's not changed,
if a person's heart's not changed, they're not going to do anything. So as I engage in, so even if you talk to these leaders who are making changes and casting votes and creating systems,
change hearts to change systems.
These leaders' hearts need to be changed, and we need to befriend these leaders and talk to them about real stuff and give them the room to be able to share about their failures.
And that's the conversation that we got to start having, and the move we got to start having, because here's the problem, the challenge, I should say. What problem? Because we solve problems. That's what, being successful is all about, being able to solve problems.
Sure.
But is that a lot of, and even I see faith-based organizations, a lot of organizations are guided and controlled by the funding they get.
Of course.
And a lot of times the funding they get is not to change a heart a lot. And that's why they don't really want faith-based organizations getting funding, because they're like, hey, we don't want you talking about Jesus. We don't want you talking about trying to change people's lives and getting people saved and stuff, because the devil and the system know that that's what really works. And see, people attack the Republicans and so on, and I'm not either. But one thing that George Bush did do on the faith-based initiative was say, hey, you can get this government funding and still practice your faith with the funding that you have. And if it's about people coming and getting saved, then do that and so on. But, the others, like what we have now, not now, but what we had before, they wouldn't allow that. So you start having these issues where some churches, and that's the thing I think about before, some churches, if they were to get involved and try to get some kind of resources, they don't want the resources, because the resources come with tax and telling you what you can do and can't not do, who you can hire, you cannot hire, and so on and so forth. So you got those struggles right there in dealing with that. So I think that when you talk about faith-based organizations, or when you talk about our faith and bringing our faith to the table wherever we are and things like that, to change lives and to change hearts and so on, we got to make sure that we come with principles where we don't compromise because of money or because of you won't be able to be a part of this group or whatever.
Well, one of the ways I think we can deal with that, one of the ways I think, and this is, how does the church get involved? One of the ways the church can be involved is that, if that I think is important, is that as we begin to create these, because who I am professionally is who I am professionally, right? And so the work that I do professionally in the capacity that I do it, and I do it as a Christian. I'm a Christian. And so those are my values. And right now I'm facing some challenges in dealing with some issues right now. And because I believe as a Christian, I have a responsibility to speak up. I have some power, and I may have some leverage or whatever in a particular area. So I want to use it to affect some good. I want to create a system. And I want to be able to do something about it. And so if the church has realized that your members have particular skills and have particular gifts and have particular interests and desires, and they have resources. And so if we allow, if we stop being so myopic and thinking that everything is about us that are here only, and we start saying, hey, you don't need to separate the sacred, our Sunday time, from the secular, from our Monday through Saturday time. So be who you are at work, create these relationships, talk to people. So much can be done by having a conversation at someone's house. Right. I just think about this book that I read and how it changed. It just changed the way that I see some things. And I never even met this lady in person. But impact. And the way that she said it, the letter that she wrote to her abuser, unbelievable. And this ain't for the faint of heart right here. And my thing to her is that I hope that a lot of churches don't, I think a lot of people who are churched would read something like this and be like, oh, child, you can't read this. This is it. But you know what? Guess what? You don't have the right to tell somebody how to express their trauma. And people come to God however they come. And so I think we need to have, we need to look at what it looks like when you start bringing in people who look real moral, but they not.
Right.
And they don't love God. They just have the appearance of it.
Look at outward appearance.
And that's why I'm so grateful for you. That's why I'm glad that you stand in the public square. You still preach the message that you preach, but people know that if they need you, they can come to you. I think you're balanced, and we have differences in some of the things that we believe, right?
Yeah.
And guess what?
And we have conversations about those.
And that's okay. But I just feel like, and I want people to know that, we may not have all the answers, but I just want people to know that we're
growing, we're learning.
Yeah, that the church needs to have a more active role and needs to show up more. And just be there, man. Show up and not trying to police people's morality. Yeah. Just show up and see what the needs are, man. Yeah. And take some time to talk to somebody and get to know their name. So, but
I think, and I know we got to close. But when you say that, it's kind of like, okay, how do I balance that? When you say not police people's morality, because the ultimate objective is that I know this for a fact that if you turn your, and this other thing they say, don't come trying to proselyte, don't try to come convert nobody. But if you want help and you want help from me, the best help that I can give you is take you to Jesus, right? Take you to the Lord. Of course, get you, in the word and understand what it, so you can transform your mind and transform your heart.
But let me push back real quick, because I think that would give the wrong impression, right? So if I came to you and I needed cast, right? And I got this thing going on. What would you do with cast, with that resource that you have? What are the stipulations for you
if they need cash?
Cast.
What about cash?
Assistant support team.
What about
if I needed that resource and I wasn't a believer.
Oh, anybody get support, whatever. Remember, I'm not cast anymore. I'm Shaphat Outreach.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess because
but I know what you're saying.
Cast is such it's a familiar term. Yeah. But regardless, the resource is when we say
anybody.
But when if we don't nuance
it ain't come get saved first or anything like that. Yeah.
But if we don't nuance that, people will think the only thing you want to talk about. And like right now, I just want to eat, man. Like I will listen to whatever you want to talk about, but can we just get something to eat? And I guess my point is,
and here's the thing, not to cut you off. Here's the thing is that we talked about this before, at least as a man of faith, a spiritual leader and clergy, whatever term people want to use on the church side. When you talk about the work that we do, my work is based on biblical principles. And like we talked about before, you come into a place, what did Jesus say? You leave your blessings there, peace to this home or this person or whoever it is, if they receive you. If they receive you, leave. Then what is the second thing he told them to do? Have fellowship. Whatever they put before you eat, have fellowship with them, right? And then once you have fellowship with them, then you have opportunity to minister to them. What's your need? You need healing? Let me heal you. Need some food? Let me give you some food. Yeah, but fourth, you don't leave it out. Announce the kingdom of God is at hand.
No question,
right?
No,
right.
But I think
I agree. So if we do it the way Jesus did it, we'd be in line.
Here's what I'm not saying. And I guess this is why. This is a good intersection, because I think what happens is it's one of those either or. It's not. It's a both and. It's like, you know what? Let's sit down and eat.
Yeah,
let's meet the needs. And then, and then we need to find ways to begin conversations about talking about the spiritual matters. And I think what happens is all too often people have come in and all they want to do is talk about Jesus, and they've left the other issues out.
But I think also, and I understand that. And I'm just, because I deal with so much and I hear so much, see so much, I've been around for a while with this, is that also I know that there are pastors out there that do want to help people, but a lot of times they've been burnt, they've been used, all kind of things.
One of them.
Yeah, all kind of things that happen. And so when someone comes to you, especially if they already belong, say they're a member of another church, it's like, yeah, I want to help you, but what is your pastor doing?
What if their pastor's not doing anything?
Right. Exactly. So why are you over there? So there's accountability.
But I think there has to be. But again, I think that's about relationships.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Just show up just because that's where my mom went, my daddy went, everybody.
But people demand. A lot of times, people have a demand that you help. You're a godly man. You're supposed to help me. Okay. Yes. But I'll give you a good example. And then where we go. This one we passed. I think it was in the early 2000s. Pastor, we have church in Paradise Hills. And there was a sister that used to go to our church, but she had stopped going. And she went to this mega church and she was asking for some support from them. And so they asked her, well, what church you used to go to, blah, blah, blah. So she gave my name, the name of our church. So church called me and said, hey, we have this sister here that says that she needs some help. I think it was with her electric bill, something, and some food. And they said, we can help her. But because she said this is where she used to go, I said, no, she used to go. I think she actually said she was a member of a church. And I said, no, she used to go. She's not a member here anymore. They said, well, what we're calling to, because she said this is where she went, we want to give you the opportunity first to help her. If you can't, that's fine. We'll help her. But we just wanted, because she said this is where she goes, we wanted to give you that first shot first, and so on. Now, I thought that was righteous. I thought that was the right way to do things, and so on, versus just trying to help somebody and get their member or whatever, because people got different motives of doing different things. But the bottom line to this was, in a roundabout way, this was also accountability, right? Like, if you say this is your church, what is your pastor doing for? You probably didn't say it like that, and they did it in a nice professional way. But at the same time, they did do the necessary groundwork before they help that
I would
person.
love to have this conversation with multiple pastors to
Yeah.
kind of get, because I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying too. Like that's actually the way it should be, right?
Mhm.
When you look at the biblical examples of Paul and them, like they
Mhm.
would send letters and go,
Mhm.
hey, help Timothy.
Mhm.
He's
Mhm.
good. There needs to be accountability. People go from church to church to
Mhm.
church to church. I think that's a different issue per se. It's relevant,
Mhm.
but I guess
I'm just talking about the accountability side of it.
No,
Is when
I-
people come to you and they go to other churches and yeah, they want you to,
Yeah.
to minister and do everything while they over there, and their pastor ain't doing nothing.
I think that those things are definitely legit. I think what I wanted to end on, I think, is the, because that's true. But I think the message that needs to be clear for tonight is that the church has a responsibility
Mhm.
to show up for people who are being affected by this system that we so-called
Yeah.
justice.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? It's a greater
Yeah.
discussion. This is
Right.
going to take some time, because not only do you have different denominations, then you got, I mean, there's just so many different things that we have to deal with. But I think it's clear,
Layers and layers.
and I think it's fair to say that both of us agree
Mhm.
that this little light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine. That's right.
and it needs to
That's
shine
right. That's right.
in areas of darkness. And guess
That's right.
what, ladies and gentlemen of the church? That means that you're going to have to get a little uncomfortable.
That's right.
That means that you're going to have to get your shoes a little muddy. You're going to have to wear some clothes that are able to get dirty. You're going to probably have to walk some places that you never walked.
And be trained, because like I've had pastors to tell me that want to get involved in, man, I don't know what to do.
And I think that's part of what we need to look at.
Yeah.
I think
I want to help, but where do I start and what do I do?
Well, and we'll continue this discussion later, but I just think it's important, man.
To get
the church
involved.
has a role.
Yeah.
God has called his bride to be a light to the world.
No more free ride.
Absolutely. And I just think that it's important, man, that we don't have to, we are opposed to the things of the world, but we don't have to show that opposition to people. We don't have to show up ready to fight people and stuff. You know what I mean? There is a sense of vulnerability.
Yeah.
You're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
People are going to take advantage of you, whatever. I get it. But I think if we can create a nucleus of churches here in the city, in other cities that are engaged in the same ways and have created these systems of accountability and stuff like that, I really think we can begin to have some real conversations about maybe, and some of these churches need to come out of some of their ways. Some of them need to engage in other ways. But I think it's going to happen as we begin as leaders and faith leaders in the community to come together and be willing to be transparent. The very things that we're calling people that are in the world, we want them to act like the church when we're not.
Right.
And the call is to us. So I think that's good, man.
That's true.
Gun violence, I think, just to cap it off, I guess what I heard tonight was, gun violence is an issue. A large majority of the people in the Black community nationwide are killed as a result of gun violence. And it's something that needs to be looked at. The systems also need to be looked at, though, and the way that these systems are cause a lot of the opportunities for violence. And then the church needs to get involved because of the systems to intervene in these systems and work with the leadership within there to change the hearts of the people that are continuing to exacerbate these systems and build power within these systems that are still continuing to exploit people. So I think it's just it's a very difficult road.
I think it was George Stevens. Was it George Stevens? I think it was George Stevens that said, we don't need the church. We don't need the politicians or these systems of politics in the church, but we most definitely need the politicians, and these systems need the church. We don't need them, but they need us.
Absolutely. And so I think, we don't have the answer. This is just something we've been talking about for quite a while. But I guess any last words you want to
19 from 6 to 9 o'clock at Marina Village. And there it is. It's on my it's on my Facebook page, where you can actually register for free on Eventbrite. So we're trying to get that number. We have so many heads that we're going to feed. And so we want to make sure that we have the proper amount of number of people there versus overwhelming or too under and spending a lot of resources on this. So please register for that. It's Divine Protection Night. Thanksgiving has just passed. After Thanksgiving, crime and violence starts picking up. And so we do a special prayer. We go through the word, remind you of God's protection. We do a special prayer. And that prayer not only cover you during this season, but it cover you for the whole year. We have numerous of testimonies of how mighty God has worked in protecting and watching over people that gotten that special prayer. And
Divine protection.
So we've been doing this for 23 years.
Wow.
23 years we've been doing this. And so we're inviting the community to get involved this time around. So we're hoping that the community will get involved.
And let me say this, just in support of Bishop Bowser, you know, you guys know, I think everybody knows the work that you do in the community. And this is one of the times that we get to support this brother and show up for the event, to show him the appreciation. He is one that believes that the church should be involved, and I believe we need to support him. So I'm going to post the flyer in the comment section here, and I'll also begin to start sharing it. I wanted to wait because if you share it too soon, so I'm going to start sharing it on my platforms. And I think we need to show up and show Bishop Bowser that we love him. This is an event that is already being paid for. Your spot's paid for. So Divine Protection Night, December 19th. I just want to shout out again this book.
Yes, I got to get that.
I Can't Live Like This Anymore by Lalata G out of Madison, Wisconsin. This book is heavy. This book is for real ones. If you've experienced sexual abuse in your life of any kind, I believe that this will hit you no matter where you do it. My heart goes out to the women, young and old, that have experienced sexual trauma in their life.
Amen.
You know, I know it's cheesy to say I'm praying for you, but the reason why I say that I'm praying for you is because when I'm praying, I believe that this book is an answer to prayer to somebody.
Amen.
And so when I'm praying for God to intervene in a particular way, which could be a book or somebody you meet on the Uber or whatever, you know what I mean, wherever you're at.
It opened up the door.
Yes, because, you know, so that's when I say I'm praying for you. That's what I'm praying, that God would give you the help. But I Can't Live Like This Anymore by Lalata G out of Madison, Wisconsin. I ordered mine off of Amazon, and I read it in a day. It's about 200 pages, and it is incredible. So thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And we just hope that your week is super good. We'll be here.
Holiday weekend coming to a close.
Coming to a close. Got to go back to reality tomorrow.
Holiday season is here, though.
That's it. And so we love you. We'll be, Lord willing, we'll be back next week, 7 o'clock, same time, same channel.
Lord willing.
And have a great week.